Hello, and welcome to the nonprofit world, where we highlight individuals and organizations who are passionate about empowering people to make a difference in the lives of others, in our community, and around the world. I'm Paula Sorrells-Bean, your host for today's program. And I'm excited to introduce you today to Susan Sadecki, who is the President and CEO of Main Street Community Foundation, located in Bristol, Connecticut. Welcome, Susan, to our program.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm excited to have you here. A lot of nonprofits are established to focus on an individual or group of individuals in a community, but your nonprofit is a little bit different. And you're here mostly, or you're established mostly to connect donors with the community and with a charitable organization that they are interested or passionate about.
That's exactly right.
That's wonderful.
What a great summary. You should join our board of directors.
So who is Main Street Community Foundation?
So like you so eloquently mentioned, so the Main Street Community Foundation is a nonprofit, 501c3, philanthropic organization supported by the public. And so when I say supported by the public, we are an organization that is built with component funds that have all been established by donors. Now, a donor for the Main Street Community Foundation, like any community foundation in the world, can mean an individual, a family, a business, a group of individuals who come together, and that donor chooses to work through their local community foundation to fulfill a particular charitable purpose by building a fund at the community foundation, most of which are endowment funds. Endowment meaning a permanent fund.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. And what is your key mission or the goal of your organization?
Right. So the key mission of the Main Street Community Foundation is really to enhance the quality of life in the communities, Connecticut communities, of Bristol, Burlington, Plainville, Plymouth, Southington, and Woolcott. So you might ask, well, how do you enhance the quality of life in those communities? Well, we do that through many different initiatives. The first being stewarding the assets of those gifts that those donors have given us, those component funds. We do grant making, obviously, through the income that we gain on those funds that are invested. So again, establishment of funds meaning working with donors and building up a permanent resource of assets, stewarding those assets, fulfilling those charitable goals, community leadership, and convening. We really like to identify in the communities that we serve those most important emerging community issues, gather the community around those issues, and think about how can we together with other partner organizations in the community, with residents of those communities, how do we solve those emerging community issues?
This is such a unique idea, I think. I don't know too many community foundations that are set up or established as yours is. When did Main Street Community Foundation begin, and how did it get started?
So Main Street Community Foundation was actually started in 1995.
Okay.
And it followed a 20-year conversation from a group of community leaders, primarily from Bristol and Burlington, who really knew about the concept of a community foundation and the fact that you could pull assets together from private donors, right, individual donors and businesses, pull those assets together and have this permanent resource of assets that would live on forever, that could help to sustain the nonprofit community in the communities served, as well as provide educational and career advancement opportunities for students through scholarships. The industry, however, the sector, the community foundation sector, field, has actually been around for over 100 years.
My goodness.
Yeah. So 2014 was the 100th, if that makes sense? The 100th anniversary of the field, with the first community foundation being established by private citizens, as ours was as well, in the community of Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How about that?
So there are community foundations throughout the United States. I believe the number is up over 750 now.
Okay.
And in Connecticut alone, I believe we have at least 20 community foundations.
My goodness.
Every community foundation serves a particular community, whether community is defined by a group of cities and towns like ours is, or whether a community foundation is serving a particular county, a single community, or in some cases, there's community foundations that serve a whole state.
Okay, well that's good to know.
But we're young. We were formed in 1995. Our anniversary is next month on March 17th. We'll be 24 years old.
24.
So we'll be having our 25th anniversary in 2020 with a quarter-century celebration.
That sounds exciting. I'm sure those plans are already in place.
We have a pre-planning meeting at the end of the month. We do.
That's wonderful. Well, how is a fund started?
Great question. So a fund gets started when a donor determines they want to leave a legacy to their community. And whether that time happens during someone's lifetime, or perhaps they decide to leave a permanent gift in their estate plan to be fulfilled when they're no longer here. So you hear a lot about estate planning and leaving a legacy and legacy building. We are that local legacy building entity that helps to facilitate, again, charitable giving in our community more for the long term. For short term, but more for the long term. So basically, if an individual decides that they would like to support a local charity that maybe they've been supporting for their whole working life. So perhaps it's their local YMCA or their local Boys and Girls Club or their local food pantry. They can establish a fund at the community foundation that would then provide a grant annually to that charity for whatever purpose they have chosen. So it could be unrestricted support for that organization. It could be for a specific program. When we're talking about, so what does it cost to establish a fund at a community foundation? Our minimum is $10,000. And that $10,000 can be built over 5 years. So it's a great way for families to come together and pool their assets to create a family legacy fund. And there's different types. If you want to establish a scholarship, it's a little higher. It's $25,000, and that's because the cost of education is so much higher. We want to make sure that the size of the grant award for the scholarship will make a difference in advancing the educational and career opportunities for that student. So establishing a fund starts with a phone call to the community foundation. We sit down, we explore what are the charitable intentions of the donor, how would they like to see their legacy reflected. You can have as much anonymity or not. So you can name a fund with a silly name like the Mickey Mouse Fund, which I'm very fond of Mickey Mouse, but you could do it anonymously without putting your name on it. Or you could put your family name on it. Personally, I love when families name a fund or individual donors name a fund after themselves or a loved one or someone they want to honor, because I really think it inspires others to give. And quite frankly, community foundations were affordable. It's affordable philanthropy. Anyone can build a fund at the community foundation. It's not something where you have to be of a certain income level in order to start a fund at the community foundation. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's local philanthropy. You're building something for the local people in your community to enhance that community, and it lasts forever. My favorite type of fund is a donor-advised fund. A donor-advised fund is a great alternative to a private foundation. A donor-advised fund can be started with the same minimum, $10,000, but then every year the community foundation conveys to the donor based on what our spending policy is. So what's available to spend from the fund can only be based on income. We never want to spend the principal gift to the fund, right? The principal
Right.
gift is what we're stewarding so that this fund will live on forever. So a spendable portion of the income every year is available for the donor to then recommend grants to their favorite charities. So they can be giving all year long, depending on the size of their fund. So say we let them know, okay, this year your fund has $1,500 available. They may want to split that up between 3 different projects at 3 different organizations. And people might say, well, what's $500 going to do? Well, $500 can be the difference between a small nonprofit that's all volunteer run, the difference between them getting that extra security platform for their server, if they even have one, or not.
Yeah.
Getting those email licenses or not. So it makes a difference. Every amount makes a difference.
It does. I know that even small amounts can make a big difference for an organization.
We also have funds. So, we talked about donor advised. Everybody knows what a scholarship fund is. We have a designated fund, which is the one I told you about supporting a local charity. We also have what we call field of interest funds. So if a donor has a particular charitable interest in a particular field. So say a donor has great interest in historical preservation. They could set up a fund that will provide opportunities for grant-seeking nonprofit organizations who specialize in historical preservation, like our local historical societies, to apply for a grant in our competitive general grant cycle. So we have funds that have been established by field of interest that we use for that general grant cycle. Could be animal welfare, like I said, could be historical preservation, arts and culture, environmental conservation, education, both early childhood education, could be elementary education, could be secondary education. So basically anything that a donor defines as charitable, and of course is defined by the Internal Revenue Service as charitable as well, is eligible for a component fund at the Community Foundation. It's really fascinating.
That is fascinating. How do you decide which type of fund is established?
So again, together with the donor, depending what they're interested in supporting, determines the type of fund. So if I sit down with a donor and they say to me, Susan, I've always supported, I have a real interest in early childhood education or preschool education. We worked with a donor recently who has been an amazing advocate and has been involved through her career in school readiness, for example. So this donor chose to establish a fund before she retires and encouraged many people, her friends, her colleagues, family members, to donate to this fund that then will support 2 nonprofit preschool organizations in one of our local communities. Talk about a selfless act. I mean, her name's not on this fund. She's actually someone who doesn't even live. She's not a resident of one of our 6 communities, but she has worked in one of our local communities for a very long time and just is very passionate. So that is the type of fund. So that type of fund is a designated. I've worked with donors who have sat down with me and said, I really want to be sure that elementary school children have the opportunity to learn the visual arts. That's a field of interest fund. And so any organization who is providing programming to introduce our youngest citizens to the visual arts can apply for a grant, and we would use the available money from that fund to support those types of programs. So it's really virtually anything, and depending what it is, if it's a nonprofit organization they want to support, or is it a field of interest, it's a particular line of programming. We also have general unrestricted that can be used to support any emerging community need in the community that our board defines that we're actually working on. As a community foundation, our team at the Community Foundation is involved in many different community leadership action groups, whether it's ending family homelessness or developing more access for behavioral health programs. We're involved in a number of different again, groups, and so we try to really stay, boots on the ground, as they say, and really listen to what are those emerging needs in our community that need to be addressed. We would use unrestricted funding for those types of initiatives. We've been proactive in some of our grant making. Everything isn't a reactive grant. Everything doesn't react to an application.
Okay. All right. Well, what besides the financial piece, what else can a donor give to the community foundation?
So donors can give many different things. If we're talking about, let's talk about assets first, and then I'll talk about volunteering.
Okay.
Because that's another way that donors can give to and through the community foundation. So in terms of assets, if a donor is interested in establishing a fund at the community foundation, cash is always welcome, right? Cash is a great thing, but appreciated stock can be given. Donors can identify the Main Street Community Foundation and a particular fund, if they wish, as the beneficiary, let's say, on a retirement fund, on an insurance policy. They can also give, gifts of stock, right? Like I said, gifts of stock, mutual funds, any of that. We have the appropriate procedures for facilitating all of those types of gifts.
Okay, great.
In terms of what other folks can give to the community foundation, in addition to establishing a permanent fund, we always welcome donors to what we call our Friends campaign, and that's our campaign to help with our operating costs. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We have a Friends campaign, and that means anybody can be a friend of the community foundation. You don't necessarily have to give to a specific fund. You can just give to the community foundation, and we'll be sure that those dollars are used on an annual basis for the community leadership efforts that we are, again, promoting throughout the community, as well as our operations, to make sure that we can continue to be here as the most comprehensive philanthropic organization in Central Connecticut to fulfill our donors' charitable goals. Volunteering is a huge part of what the community foundation does.
How do you engage those volunteers?
Yeah, so in addition to stewarding assets and making sure that we're honoring donor intent, we use our volunteers to help us carry out our mission of grant making and honoring donor intent. The way that we do that is through a couple different committees that we have. We have many different committees that have been identified in our bylaws. Two of the most popular committees, I'll say, that volunteers love to participate on are our distribution committee, which is the committee that determines of our discretionary money that we have available where we do receive competitive grant applications. They help to go out and interview the applicants, and then they come back to our full group, and everyone sort of advocates for what they saw and what they felt from that nonprofit to determine if the grant amount that they're seeking and the grant money that we have available are a match and would be the most appropriate use of the money that we have available that year. So there's definitely a conversation, a very long conversation. It's actually like a 4 to 7 o'clock meeting on a lovely evening in May. But we invite volunteers to really help us make those decisions, and also to learn about the nonprofit organizations in their local communities that are helping to really sustain and keep our communities vibrant and healthy.
That's wonderful.
Scholarship is another one. Scholarship is fun because scholarship committee reviewers can do that online. All of our scholarships are blinded. We receive over 1,000 applications a year for scholarships from we have over 75 scholarship funds. I think we're up to 80 actually now. So over 75 different scholarship funds that we have available for students at varying points in their education or career goals.
Okay.
So we have everything from students going to some private elementary schools, or students going on to traditional, let's say, a 4-year college degree. We also have many different types of scholarships for career training, whether it's precision machining, whether it's commercial truck driving, it could be advanced manufacturing, it could be the allied health programs that I talked about a little bit earlier. So it could be any of those things. Those reviewers receive a packet of applications. They get to go online, match up the applicant with the criteria, and some people really love that type of thing. You know, a lot of people who have been in the teaching profession love to be scholarship reviewers, but again, they're all blinded, and each donor that has established a scholarship fund has the opportunity to establish their own criteria. So what may be really important to one donor may not be as important to another. So for example, one donor may decide, you know, what's really important to them is how a student has been involved in their community through community volunteering. Another donor may say it's really important for me that preference be given to students who have held down a part-time job while they're finishing up their high school education. Another person might say, well, it's really important for me for the student to, in their essay, explain to me why this scholarship would make a difference for them in pursuing a degree in, let's just say, teaching or special education or something like that.
So this is valuable information for a parent who might be, you know, thinking about a little different path for their child, maybe sending them to a private school, or thinking about college, but maybe not having the funds to do that, to pay for college for their child. How would they get in touch with, or how would somebody go about requesting or applying for a scholarship through Main Street Community Foundation?
Right, great question. And so the most important element of applying for a scholarship is the time frame. So at the Main Street Community Foundation, our scholarships are advertised every year around January 15th.
Okay.
So it's important that people know that our website, which is mainstreetfoundation.org, if they go to the website and they go under the scholarships tab, there's an apply for a scholarship module. From there, students can actually go on and actually search for scholarships that may qualify for, either based on where they live, based on the field they may be going into, teaching, engineering, like I said earlier, manufacturing. So if they answer some simple questions, it'll come up with a list of all the scholarships that they may qualify for. Our scholarships this year, for example, are due, I believe, and they're going to kill me if I get this wrong. It's either March 15th or March 28th. We've changed it a few times, but anyways, they are due in March.
And that would be online,
and
right.
It's definitely, the due date is definitely online. And for some scholarships, depending on the community that those scholarships are in, some of them have a little bit of different due dates. But January 15th they're posted. They're definitely due by mid to late March.
Okay. Great.
And that's standard every year. And then in addition to that, people can call the Community Foundation. We're always willing to help students pursue those financial aid opportunities where they can, and that match up with, again, what they're looking to achieve for their future career goals.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And some of those scholarships are available for younger students as well?
So it's interesting. So we have a couple donors who left money specifically for education at some of our local Catholic elementary schools. So depending where they live would depend if there's eligibility for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, that's great to know.
Yeah.
That's really good to know.
So that's what I mean. I mean, a community foundation is such a, wonderful anchor institution in the community that holds these assets to better the lives of other people in so many different ways.
I know you mentioned earlier that you don't have a lot of events that go on through the year, like some nonprofits will have big events going on, but you do have some. Can you highlight any of those for us now?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So what happens during the year is we have several different funds, component funds at the Community Foundation that actually, we call them community endowment funds. And the reason they're categorized as a community endowment fund is because they are really supported by volunteers who help with different fundraising efforts and getting the word out about those particular funds. The most popular, I'll say the most popular because it's the oldest and probably most well-known, is our Women and Girls Fund. We have had a Women and Girls Fund since 2001. And each year, that Women and Girls Fund hosts a signature event in the month of April that is called the Wonder of Women event called the WOW event. We have every year a wonderful speaker that comes in, someone that's inspirational. We gather over 400 people, not just women. Everyone who wants to support and advance opportunities for women and girls in our communities. And they gather at the AquaTurf Club, and we have a simple program, a silent auction, and just, again, a really inspiring speaker in addition to some grantees that speak about how a grant from the Women and Girls Fund has helped their organization advance their mission. And I think that's what's critical.
Yeah.
People that come to that event really get to understand the mission of the Women and Girls Fund, which again is to advance opportunities for women and girls of all ages, whether that's in economic security, it's in education, empowerment, self-confidence. I mean, there's so many different areas.
Yeah,
New to the foundation is our Men and Boys Fund. So we did have a group of men who came to us and said, listen, statistics are showing that there are high suicide rates among men, higher than women, that there are many single dads that are raising children and are needing assistance with different parenting and mentoring. So they organized a Men and Boys Fund as well.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So how, you've told us about the website, but would you tell us again how to access you by web, and then if maybe the phone number for the Main Street Community Foundation?
Absolutely. So the Main Street Community Foundation, you can read all about us, including a Community Foundation 101 to answer all your questions of who we are and what we are. www.mainstreetfoundation.org, and we can be reached by phone at 860-583-6363.
Wonderful. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
I'm
having
so
me.
excited to hear more about your organization, and I know that our viewers are as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, I'm Paula Sorrells-Bean, and I'm here with the nonprofit world, encouraging you to embrace your passion and make a difference in the life of someone today.